Welcome, fight fans, to the scorecard. Tonight, Marcus and I are diving deep into a fight that still sparks heated debate whenever its name comes up. We're talking May 5th, 2007, Las Vegas, a WBC super middleweight title bout that promised fireworks, but delivered a controversy that echoed for years. Marcus, you've seen your share of questionable decisions, but where does De La Hoya versus Sturm rank for you?
Jay, honestly, it's right up there at the top of the what were they watching list. When I think of daylight robbery in boxing, that fight against Felix Sturm, the golden boy Oscar De La Hoya's win, it makes my blood boil, man. It wasn't even close to my eyes. And I know I'm not alone in feeling that way.
You're absolutely not. For those who might not remember or are new to this particular chapter of boxing history, Oscar De La Hoya was, at this point, an absolute legend. The Golden Boy, a multi-division champion, an icon. Felix Sturm, a solid German middleweight, not as well known on the global stage, but a very disciplined and skilled fighter in his own right. The stage was set, the bright lights of Vegas, and the expectation was high. De La Hoya was expected to roll, wasn't he?
Absolutely. That's the narrative that was pushed. Oscar was the superstar, the cash cow, the one heading for that mega fight with Floyd Mayweather. Sturm was seen as a tune-up, a stepping stone, a guy who'd give a decent account of himself maybe, but ultimately succumb to the Golden Boy machine. But someone forgot to tell Felix Sturm that script, didn't they? Because what we saw in that ring was a completely different story.
They certainly did. From the very first round, it felt different. Sturm came out with a game plan, and he executed it beautifully. What struck me, rewatching it, was his defensive mastery. He was elusive, he was slick, and he made De La Hoya miss a lot. And when he wasn't making him miss, he was landing his own shots, clean, sharp jabs and right hands.
His ring control was phenomenal, Jay. Sturm wasn't just reacting, he was dictating the pace and the distance. He was moving, pivoting, stifling De La Hoya's aggression. You saw Oscar getting frustrated. His punches weren't landing with their usual snap, and Sturm was just too damn smooth. It was a clinic, plain and simple, from a fighter who was supposed to be a warm-up act. He was outboxing De La Hoya, making him look ordinary in there.
And that's the key term, outboxing. It wasn't a brawl, it wasn't a slugfest where you could argue about who landed the harder shots. This was a technical exhibition from Sturm. He was landing more, cleaner, more effective punches. He was controlling the center of the ring, forcing De La Hoya to chase. He kept Oscar off balance, never letting him settle into a rhythm. This wasn't a performance where you could point to any significant damage being done to Sturm either. He looked fresh, composed, almost serene through most of it.
No kidding! Oscar's face was showing the wear and tear more than Sturm's. I remember thinking, if this fight goes to the cards, there's no way Sturm loses. I mean, based on what my eyes were telling me and what the criteria for scoring are, effective aggression, ring generalship, defense, hard and clean punches, Sturm was winning almost every single round. Maybe De La Hoya snuck one or two, but it felt like 10 rounds to 2 or 9-3 at absolute worst for Sturm.
Precisely, which brings us to the moment of truth. The final bell rings, everyone's buzzing, the crowd is a mix of awe at Sturm's performance and maybe a little confusion for De La Hoya's. And then Michael Buffer gets on the mic, and the scores are read. It was a split decision, Marcus. One judge had it 115-113 for Sturm, but the other two judges 115-113 for Oscar De La Hoya. A split decision victory for the Golden Boy. That announcement, I tell you, you could feel the air go out of the arena and then a collective gasp of disbelief.
Disbelief? Try pure outrage. I was screaming at the TV, man. 115-113 for De La Hoya? Are you kidding me? That means they gave him 7 rounds. 7 rounds. When did Oscar win 7 rounds in that fight? He looked lost for significant portions of it. Sturm was just too slick, too fast, too smart. You know what, Jay? I rewatched that fight countless times over the years, and every single time I come to the same conclusion. It was a travesty, a blatant injustice. Sturm was robbed blind.
I mean, Felix Sturm's reaction post-fight, it speaks volumes. He was absolutely fuming, calling it a robbery. And he wasn't wrong. He was visibly distraught, and rightfully so. He'd just put on the performance of his life against a boxing legend on the biggest stage and had it snatched away. Can you imagine the emotional toll of something like that? The pride, the effort, the sacrifice, all invalidated by 2 scorecards that seem to exist in a different dimension.
That's why these decisions hurt so much, Jay. It's not just a fight. It's someone's career, someone's legacy. Sturm went in there, proved he belonged, proved he could beat one of the all-time greats, and then he's told, nope, sorry, the judges saw something else. It's infuriating. And you know, this wasn't an isolated incident for De La Hoya either, was it? ESPN's Dan Rafael, a man who's seen more fights than most, even pointed out that there's always been much debate about the outcome of some of De La Hoya's fights. This one just happens to be one of the clearest examples.
That's a critical point, Marcus. While we're focusing on Sturm, it does fit a pattern. The Golden Boy had a reputation, fairly or unfairly, for sometimes getting the nod in close, or even not-so-close fights. Whether it was due to his star power, the sheer revenue he generated, or perhaps a subconscious bias from judges, it's hard to say definitively. But the perception was there. And this fight against Sturm only solidified that perception for many.
Perception? It was reality, Jay. I mean, let's talk about specific rounds. Can we honestly find 7 rounds where Oscar De La Hoya was the clear winner? I struggle to find even 5. Sturm's jab was a thing of beauty. He was popping it out, snapping Oscar's head back, establishing distance. He used his feet constantly, creating angles, never staying in one place for Oscar to plant his feet and unleash those power hooks. Oscar was lunging, missing, looking increasingly desperate.
I agree. If we break it down round by round, Sturm was simply more effective. The scoring criteria emphasize clean punching, effective aggression, defense, and ring generalship. Sturm excelled in all but perhaps effective aggression if you're looking for knockout blows, but even then, his aggression was effective in racking up points. De La Hoya's aggression often translated to chasing Sturm around and hitting air. His defense was breached by Sturm's sharp counters. It really makes you wonder what metrics those two judges were using.
They were probably looking at Oscar's shiny shorts, Jay. Or the crowd reaction for Oscar's misses. I mean, this isn't to diminish De La Hoya's incredible career, but this particular fight, it's a stain. It's a blatant example of how the business side of boxing can sometimes overshadow the sport itself. There was a narrative, Oscar was going to fight Mayweather, and Sturm was not part of that narrative. So, the narrative won, and Sturm lost, unfairly.
It's a really tough pill to swallow for purists of the sport. We talk about the integrity of boxing, and then fights like this happen, and it just erodes confidence in the judging system. Sturm himself said, "I got robbed." And there's little, if any, credible argument against that. The stats, the eye test, the general consensus among objective observers all point to a Sturm victory.
Exactly. You didn't see anyone outside of Oscar's most ardent, rose-tinted glasses-wearing fans genuinely arguing he won that fight. Not unbiased analysts, not commentators, nobody who knew what they were looking at. It was a masterclass from Sturm, a tactical, defensive, punching-on-the-move masterclass that deserved the nod. And it didn't get it.
It's a testament to Sturm's character, I think, that he continued to have a very successful career despite this. He went on to become a multiple-time world champion at middleweight. But you have to wonder what a win over De La Hoya at that point in his career would have done for him. It would have catapulted him into superstardom in the U.S., cemented his legacy even further. He was denied that moment, that recognition.
It's a huge what if. What if Sturm gets that decision? Does he get the big money fights? Does his name carry more weight? Absolutely he does. He beat Oscar De La Hoya, the Golden Boy, in his prime. That's a huge scalp. But instead, he's left with the bitter taste of injustice. And Oscar, well, he moved on to the Mayweather fight, collecting another massive payday with this controversial win tucked under his belt.
And that's why it's so important for us to keep discussing these moments, Marcus, to highlight when the system fails, to ensure that the fighters who put everything on the line get the fair shake they deserve. Because at the end of the day, boxing is a sport, but it's also a business, and sometimes the business side casts a long, unfair shadow over the integrity of the competition.
Preach, Jay, preach! My final assessment on De La Hoya versus Sturm is unequivocal. Clear robbery. No two ways about it. Sturm's performance warranted the victory, his ring control, his defensive prowess, his ability to land cleaner, more impactful punches, they all pointed to him being the rightful winner. The Golden Boy got a gift that night, plain and simple.
And on that decisive note, we wrap up another edition of the Scorecard. It's always fascinating, and sometimes frustrating, to revisit these moments in boxing history. Felix Sturm versus Oscar De La Hoya, May 5th, 2007, a fight that remains etched in the minds of many as one of boxing's most questionable decisions. Thank you for joining us, Marcus, and thank you all for listening. Until next time, keep fighting the good fight, and let's hope for fair judging in every bout.
You got it, Jay. And remember, keep your eyes open because sometimes what they tell you isn't what's real. See ya.